First of all, thanks for being here. A special thanks to those of you who have come a long ways to be here or have taken off of work. But thanks to all of you for being here to join us in remembering Ted. Ted was many things to many people. He was a husband to Doreen for nearly 55 years, a father to Jay, Katie, and Joey, a grandfather to Lauren, Carl, and Jax. He was a brother, a friend, a cousin. He was one of 6 children born to Joe and Helen Zukowski. We lived just down the street here, on the corner, half a block away, in that little white house. Ted and I were Irish twins, born 360 days apart. We grew up together and remained very close. In fact, my first memory as a person was about Ted. At 5 years old, he went off to kindergarten and abandoned me and left me devastated. So much so that our mother hired an imaginary kindergarten teacher for me, Miss Rose. So when Ted went to kindergarten, I went to kindergarten to lessen the feeling of abandonment by Ted. But he had his issues with me too. He said I caused him to be discharged from the crib early, which caused his head to be flat. Well, I'm not so sure about that, but that's what he said. Our father worked shift work at the Kimberly-Clark Mill. And when he was on days, Ted and I would often go downstairs and play at his huge wooden workbench. We, work the vise, and we would take out his tools and play with them and check around. And one day we came across a box of 12-gauge shotgun shells. We opened 2 of them up and were fascinated with the copper-colored BBs that they contained. He put some in his pocket, and I put some in my pocket, but we didn't know what to do with the empty shell casings, so we looked around, and there was the furnace. It was idle at the time. We opened the door and threw in the casings, shell casings. A few weeks later, when it got cooler, our dad went downstairs and started a furnace fire. About the time he got upstairs, there was this huge bang and smoke billowed out of the registers. Ted looked at me and I looked at him, and our dad said, "What the hell?" and headed downstairs. But we knew what had happened. The shells that we had thrown into the furnace had exploded, causing the furnace door to fly open and all this filled the house with smoke. Well, after the smoke had cleared, and we were not blamed for this, it became an unknown matter, and we were alone, we would look at each other and say, "What the hell?" and have a big laugh.
So here's Ted tending the fire. His dad, of course, was the first fireman at the Kimberly-Clark Mill. So, Ted definitely has it in his genes. But, will he be successful? I don't.
Now, we had 2 grandmothers. We never knew our grandfathers, but every month or so, we would accompany our dad up to Iron River to visit his mother and oftentimes his brothers and his sister Mary. Now, our grandmother did not speak English. She only spoke Polish. And also she was short and squat and a rather serious person, not warm and fuzzy. In fact, so much so that she had to give us 25 cents each when we left for her to kiss us on the cheek. But one time, we went up there, she had this pet duck that followed her around like any devoted pet would. And we said, hey, grandmother's not so bad. Well, the next time we went up there, There was no white duck to be found. So we asked our dad, ask Grandma where her pet duck is. So he did. He asked her in Polish where the white duck was. She looked a little bit confused and said, the price of a kiss just went up. Now, our other grandmother was Anna Kadelsky. She owned and operated the Kadelsky's Market along with her brother, John Zeidel, and later her son, Lester. And we cut her grass in the summertime on Saturday mornings. And this was one of many jobs that Ted and I had. We peddled papers, shoveled snow, picked beans. We also sold magazines door to door. We also made these hot pads, with these loops, and you had this little loom, and you made these things, and we sold them in Kadelsky's Market. We sold them in Bakulia's store. But cutting Granny's grass was special for two reasons. One, we got $1 each, was far above the minimum wage, and she also served us lunch. When we got done with the job of cutting her grass, she would make an inspection, and she'd walk around and around and around until she found something that needed further attention. Well, we soon learned that we should just leave something for her to find, and she would find it, and we'd fix it, and we'd be done with it, and off to lunch we would go. Now, part of the lunch was that she allowed us to go into the store and select anything we wanted. The store was vacant, so she, because it was the weekend and stores were closed on the weekends, so she would unlock the big door in the back of the store, and we would run in like banshees and find us a treat. Twinkies and fruit pies were among our favorites. She would set us down at the picnic table in the backyard and feed us Smokies, wrapped in bunny bread with the butter coming through, and we would get a quart of milk, chocolate milk, to share. This was died and gone to heaven stuff. We would never get this at home. Well, Ted's favorite sport growing up was baseball. Our dad encouraged us in baseball. He played catch with us in front of the house and in the backyard. We played, Midget League, Little League, Babe Ruth League, Connie Mack League, American Legion, and of course, high school baseball. Ted was a pitcher and a first baseman. And he threw a no-hitter one time. And I was the catcher. And I was so proud of Ted. In his adult life, his sport was golf. He loved to play golf. Now, he wasn't the best of the golf players, but nevertheless, that didn't stop him from giving advice. Oftentimes, just before you were about to hit the ball, he would give you some advice. Now, Jay, put a little bit more weight on that back foot before you make that chip shot. Yeah. Well, he and I went to Scotland, and that was a birthday present for him at his 60-year birthday party. The birthday party basically was in the backyard of their mud-lined house, but at a certain time, Katie coaxed him out to the front porch, and we heard and we saw a bagpiper coming down the street. And when he turned into the driveway, I think I heard Ted said, "What the hell?" Anyway, we had a wonderful time in Scotland. There was four of us. Preston and Frank Neely, brothers, joined us. Anyway, we had caddies. And the way that worked was that when the caddies showed up, they showed up one at a time, and they would pick up the remaining bags and pick the lightest one. And the heaviest golf bag was always Ted's. He had 17 wedges and 32 golf balls, even one chewed up by their dog, Muffin. But by the end of the 18 holes, Ted and his caddy were the best of friends. Now, going back a bit, Ted, of course, was married to Doreen, and Doreen's parents were a little, let's say, at first hesitant of Ted because he was a bit older than she was. But when Jake, Doreen's father, asked Ted to join him in deer hunting, Ted was ecstatic, and he wanted to do his very best to impress his father-in-law. But, he didn't have the proper clothes, but Doreen cut some red squares and pinned them onto his jacket, his insulated jacket. He bought himself one of these red hats, wool hats with the ear flaps that came down. He tied underneath his chin. He bought himself some underwear. He did have some boots. So off they went the first day, deer hunting. And the first stop was the country bar. And it was the last stop. And so on the subsequent days, Ted dressed more comfortably. Now, we had our own deer camp up at Sand Lake for 16 years with Ted, Pat, and his friends. And I was there some of the times when I could. And it was absolutely wonderful. Well, to us guys, it was wonderful. And I'll let you in a secret. Deer camp isn't about deer hunting. It's about being away from the old lady and reveling in our manhood. We drank too much, ate too much, had a lot of laughs, played cards late into the night, went to the local bars, played ping pong, and even beanbag. Had a lot of laughs. It was great fun. Looking back at Mundelein, when they lived in Mundelein, we visited them often. We would go to their favorite pizza restaurant, which they served peanuts in the shell, and you'd eat them, and you'd throw the shells on the floor. We went to the dinner theaters that they had. There was Jay and Kim's wedding that we really enjoyed. And Ted had his decades-long renovation of their house. And then there was Carol and Tom Keene, their friends, their neighbors and friends. Tom Keene was a very good friend of Ted. They were real buddies, and they had a pact. They had a stash. Each had a stash where they, took some money and hid it from their wives. And the agreement was between Ted and Tom was that when one of them died, the other one would get their stash. Now, Tom died first, but unfortunately, Tom didn't tell Ted where his stash was stashed. So when Ted would go and visit Carol, he would try to spend some time looking for his stash, now Tom's stash, which was now his, but he never did find it. Ted was a very handy man. He could build things and do things and fix things like nobody else. He and Pat started you might want to call it a construction company. It was called Close Enough Construction. They did mainly fencing, and a lot of it in Highland Park, which was an exclusive area in the Chicago metropolitan area. And when they were fencing, homeowner sometimes would come out and get a bit too close, and Pat would fart and send the homeowner scurrying back into the house. Very funny. And Ted was also a storyteller extraordinary. His Ropley series were classic. Fortunately, we were able to capture his stories, or most of them, in a book called The Short Stories of Niagara, published by the Niagara Area Historical Society. And Karen Clinky, the president, is here today. Ted was also a collector, and to say that is, an understatement. He loved to collect things. Spindles and molding. Yeah, spindles and molding were his favorites. And he never saw a 2x4 that he didn't like. And I don't think any car ever saw or had the pleasure of entering his garage. Ted was not a technology type person, a techno. He didn't have a phone, he didn't like a computer, and he had no use for them. He got all his facts and figures from the bathroom reader. Doreen and the kids called it his internet. Now, in later years, last couple of years, Ted had a mobility problem, but it didn't stop him from doing what he wanted to do. The last couple winters, he and Doreen spent with Katie and Jax down in Florida. They visited Myrtle Beach. They went on a cruise to the Bahamas. And this last Christmas, they went to the Florida Keys and to Hollywood Beach. Ted enjoyed sitting by the ocean and reading a book or just people watching. But he would walk down the boardwalk with them and do a little shopping sometimes and go out to dinner, which he enjoyed. Ted also insisted on going to and enjoyed Grandparents' Day at Jack's school. They went there and listened to the classmates, Jack sing songs, and they took a tour that Jack made of the kindergarten. Very nice. He really enjoyed it. Also, Teddy Bunkport, of course, which is named after Ted, is undergoing some improvements. The deck is being enlarged and the sunroom is being put on. And Dorian tells me that Ted was looking very much forward to sitting, enjoying the sunset on the deck with his family, friends, and his brothers. There was only one Ted. He was kind, stubborn at times, a storyteller, a good friend, a good neighbor, very talented. But most of all, he was a husband, a father, a grandfather, a cousin, a brother, an uncle. He told me, and I'm sure he told others, that there was one thing that he wanted to do before he died, or wanted to be before he died. He wanted to be remembered by Jax, his grandson, the little guy, as he called him. On the 14th of February, a couple days after Ted had died, Katie came into the kitchen area at the breakfast table and said, "Happy Valentine's Day, everyone." And Jack said, "Happy Valentine's Day, Grandma." And then pointing to heaven, he said, "Happy Valentine's Day, Grandpa."